Parents of Reddit, what's the most absurd thing you found on your kid's social media? Not technically a parent, but an older sister. My little brother, when he was around 7-ish, had a search history of naked women and such. And when my mother found out and confronted him, he cried and was saying he just wanted to be like Jack from the Titanic by drawing naked women. And he had a few pages of his attempted drawings. Hey, maybe the kid's found his calling in art. We don't know. Was at my friend's place at around the age of 10 to 12 when my parent called me home randomly. I run in the front door and both my parents are sitting in the living room and immediately ask me to spell the word sex. I do, and then they tell me to send my brother over. My brother runs over and he'd be around 9 or 10 and doesn't come back. Turns out he searched for girls having sex but spelt it 6. These parents are over here trying to identify the digital handwriting. I found my stepdaughter's Musical.ly account. She had a bunch of poor attempts at sexy belly dancing to various Evanescence songs. She joined one of those Facebook groups. It was called Anything's an Adult Toy If You're Brave Enough. Pictures of my daughter, 11, posing quite harmlessly that went on to bum shots and short shorts. Someone pretending to be a 14-year-old girl asked her to do the shots for a modeling competition and sent similar shots so she knew how to pose. She eventually stopped the conversation. The pics came through my iPad since the devices were linked. The police got involved and also CEOP. They originated from an account in South Africa, so Interpol took over the case and will probably never get an update. Instagram never even bothered to respond to my report. This happened to the 12-year-old daughter of a friend of mine recently. She also happened across it in much the same way and reported it to the police. They ended up having a huge investigation involved with the FBI, and the guy's now been sentenced to jail. My friend's daughter was one of the dozens he'd been soliciting. Keep an eye on your kids' social media, guys. You never know who's trying to contact them. I had a coworker bring her kid in during the summer so that she could run him to the local middle school for football practice when she took her break at 9. Since I was in training at the time, I was sitting with her at her desk and mine was not in use. To keep him occupied, I'd log into my computer and then she'd pull up YouTube so we could watch the Watch Me Whip song, because apparently kids will watch that for hours. Well, one day she goes over to check in on him and says in a confused voice, "Who the heck is Ed Gein?" So it turned out that it was still logged into my YouTube profile, where I had taken to watching documentaries about serial killers, and the kid had clicked on one of the recommended videos. Whoopsies. If she's really worried about what her kid's watching, then she should just create her own YouTube account. Personally, I have childlike parents. Weirdest thing so far was having to sit down and have a talk with my mother about how some things on Facebook are not real. My extended family lives in Houston, and during Hurricane Harvey, my mother was driving my elderly relatives to hysteria by emailing them horribly photoshopped pictures of Houston landmarks submerged under 50 feet of water, followed by, "It's a biblical flood! The world is ending! The news is lying to you! You're gonna die if you don't get in your car and drive out of town right now!" I talked to my stepdad and made him give me her password so I can shut down her account during the next natural disaster. Probably doing everyone in your family a favor. When I was 9 or 10, my buddy and I were on the family computer doing whatever 9 or 10-year-olds do. My friend told me to go to prettygirls.com. Seemed innocent enough, except it directed us to an adult site, and we immediately panicked and closed the browser. My mom really chewed us out when she found out. I tried to tell her we were just looking for pretty girls, but she wasn't having it. It was a long few weeks of computerless punishment. I don't know what it is, but I'm willing to bet it's something I disapprove of. My 15-year-old happily announces that he went viral because his comment amassed 1.5k likes on Reddit. "Well, what did you ask?" I asked him. "I forgot." "What's your Reddit name?" "I can't tell you." "Then why did you mention it?" With that comment having 3.5k likes itself, I'd like to think that the son saw it and got pretty jealous. That my 12-year-old son searched for pro study tips. No joke, my son, trying to study harder. Never in a million years and lives would I have expected this. When my twins were young, in elementary school, they were looking up The Simpsons and accidentally came across some adult Simpsons content. The computer was in the living room, so I heard them giggling and turned to see two guilty little faces. It was so hard not to laugh and so disturbing. What a conversation. The sight of Milhouse and Lisa is forever burned into my retinas. Looks like everything's coming up, Milhouse. When he was little, my brother once wanted to help us find a cool new purse to order for my mom's birthday. He did an image search for fun bags, and my parents had to answer a lot of questions. Not a parent, but my cousin one time got onto the computer when he was 11 or 12 or so and tried searching for indecent pictures of girls his own age. I was there when his stepdad checked through the browser history, and needless to say, he and my cousin had a chat about acceptable search terms. Yeah, that could have gotten really bad. They might be on a list now. Not social media, but I once caught both of my nieces playing an animated game online where the objective was to spank a cartoon butt with a paddle. Every time they'd swing the paddle at the butt, it would emit the sound of a woman moaning. They couldn't understand why the game was inappropriate, and were laughing hysterically while playing. Not a parent, but some of my students, 7th and 8th grade, asked to add me on Instagram. The worst username I've come across is BootyWarrior13. To be clear, I don't ever add anyone and my account is private. I never give them my handle because I don't want them to find me, but if they do, I decline the follow anyway. Usually the way I find out about their Instagram names is because they'll oftentimes want their peers to follow them, and they'll promote themselves by putting their username or handle on the board. I often joke though that I would add them on Facebook, to which I always get the reply, "Facebook is for old people," so that's fun. When I was 12, my dad found adult Dragon Ball Z content in my search history and proceeded to look through all of the pages while I hid in the bathroom pretending to take a poop. I remember him yelling my name and having to mentally prepare to deny everything. I'm scared to death to have kids and find their adult content searches. My girls are 8 and 10, and so far we've seen sucking boobies and Scooby-Doo sex. It's great. Parenting is great. Send help. Not my kid, but on Halloween I saw a post on my 17-year-old cousin's Snapchat that was a selfie caption verbatim, "Any girls trying to come over here and suck on this spooky thing and get festive with some pumpkin spice lattes?" I immediately facepalmed, then laughed my butt off for a solid 15 minutes. A friend from work's son goes to a fairly strict Catholic school. One day, I was walking out to my car and she was outside yelling on the phone and generally freaking out. I waited around. She usually has a lot of funny drama going on. She hangs up the phone, looks at me, starts hyperventilating, and then laughs hysterically. I was like, "Girl, what is going on?" She said her son's principal called her and her husband and that they need to come to the school immediately, that her son will fill her in on the rest. She continues to tell me that her son got caught looking at naked ladies on the internet, and the principal printed out his search history. He searched booby prawn and lady parts during class. She was yelling at her husband on the phone, telling him about the situation, and all he had to say was, "We should have taught him how to delete the history." I mean, the husband has the kid's best interests at heart, let's be honest here. When I was a little girl, I wanted to play some Barbie games or look at girl stuff, so I went to girls.com. Went downstairs to my mom crying in order to rat myself out. My little sister had something similar happen. She wanted to look at new bikes in order to decide what to ask Santa for. She went to dicks.com, hoping to see Dick's Sporting Goods. Instead, she saw a lot of schlong. Guess it runs in the family. Funny thing is, dicks.com actually takes you to Dick's Sporting Goods homepage now. Oh dear God. Reading this makes me realize how much my parents probably saw in my search history before I knew about incognito mode. Okay, it should be my parents telling this story, but here goes. So when I was a youngin' and just exploring the internet, I would usually go on Disney Channel to play games, but I wanted to find sites with fun girly stuff on them. So of course I just went to girls.com. Well, that took me right to an adult site, and my little self was like, "Whoops," and closed it right away. Well, apparently my dad had been looking at the browser history and noticed. So my dad's interrogating my two older brothers, asking them who was looking at adult content. And of course they said it wasn't them. My dad was persistent with trying to get them to confess until I come down the stairs and confessed that it was me. My brothers had the biggest sigh of relief. You're a good sister. I know many a sister would have counted that as a double win. Number 1 for not getting caught, and number 2 for getting your brothers in trouble. I found out my son is an urban explorer. He's 14 and I saw some of the videos of him and his friends sneaking into an old Air Force base and climbing on top of an air hangar. Yeah, just make sure he doesn't do anything really dangerous. One of my buddies was an urban explorer and I honestly don't know how he's not dead. He's climbed the top of spherical-shaped buildings, hopped on fast-moving trains, and other crazy stuff. This is another trend that I just find incredibly dangerous and stupid. Guys, please don't do stuff like this. It's not worth it just for some views. I was trying to figure out my niece's age, but it was too late to call my mom and ask. I remembered she had an Instagram account, and I thought that might help me figure out how old she is. I looked her up. She has the standard tween Insta bio about what activities she likes and a list of 15 of her BFFs, immediately followed by pondering, and I quote, "Mostly, why do people hate me?" She's 12. She's definitely 12. In my 9-year-old son's Google history, I found, "Do girls in England poo blood for a month? Do you live in England? Because it's weirder if you don't." My 15-year-old dropping acid on Snapchat. So, not just bad choices, but we're raising a kid stupid enough that not only created video evidence, which was beyond dumb, but to keep it under my story. I checked my 11-year-old son's search history to find a number of interesting questions. Do men grow vaginas? Will my penis disappear when I'm 18? Will I become a girl? How do I save my penis? I asked him about his search history a couple days later, and he told me that some kids in school told him that when boys turn 18, they turn into girls and lose their penis. Those bastards. I hopped on my nephew's tablet and proceeded to pull up the internet browser. Immediately, I was staring at a screenshot of an overweight, homeless-looking Santa knocking the cornhole out of a much younger Mrs. Claus. I immediately asked my nephew what kind of research he was doing with this Santa video, and his face turned fire engine red and he scurried back to his room. I'm sure he at least appreciates your discretion. This is kinda close. So I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. They both love to watch kids' YouTube. Mostly these annoying toy unwrapping videos. I don't know. Anyhow, the other day I was working on my computer and they were playing Play-Doh. My 2-year-old comes into the room and tells my wife, while I'm listening, "Mommy, I made this." My wife, "Oh, that's awesome." 2-year-old, "Do you like it? Let me know in the comments." My wife and I died. I think this might kind of say something about what we're exposing our kids to in this day and age, but we're not going to get into that right now. I recently discovered my 10-year-old son had been looking for inappropriate content, but his computer has parental controls, so he was trying to look it up on his Roblox game. My daughter was 6 at the time. She was supposed to be asleep, and I go up to charge her Kindle and can't find it. I go to her room and quietly sneak in. I find her watching a video under a blanket. It's a popular mechanics video about how to build your own windmill. She had a mock model in the corner of the room she was working on. I definitely wasn't expecting that. This is definitely our most wholesome one so far. She's just enthusiastic about her project. My kids are too young for Twitter or Snapchat, but they love to watch YouTube. I started getting notifications a few months ago from people replying to my comments on conspiracy videos. I found out my son has a curiosity about flat earthers and doomsday preppers. That's kind of the scary side of everything. The kid doesn't know any better, he's just watching a video. And once you watch one, YouTube just starts to recommend more and more. They don't understand that the videos they're watching are conspiracy videos, and that the information in them might be less than accurate. When my son was 8, my wife was looking at his tablet and saw his comments on YouTube videos. Quite a few comments along the lines of, "You don't know what you're talking about, you," and then a series of randomly strung together cuss words that normally wouldn't be used together. He'd get called out by others for the random cussing and he'd say, "I'm only 8, I can do what I want," followed by random string of cuss words. When we brought it up, he knew they were bad words, but was repeating other vulgar comments he saw from other comment trolls, and didn't fully understand the harshness of his words. Now his YouTube habits are monitored much more closely, and he hasn't done anything like that since. Hopefully you got on top of that one early enough that he's not going to turn into another kid telling me how he's going to screw my girlfriend on Fortnite. My daughters are grown up now, but when one of them was around 14 or 15, I opened up her MySpace page. She was telling all these kids that her mother, that would be me, was a raging alcoholic. She was telling them how I was neglectful and how I didn't like her. At the time, I was pregnant with twins, working full-time, and my husband was gone with the Marines a lot. I'm not a drinker at all. Obviously, we had a long talk. She was feeling left out with all the excitement over the babies. Still though, it was pretty hurtful. It took me a long time to get over that. I wouldn't take that one too personally. Your daughter was just looking for some attention. It's honestly kind of understandable. My younger brother thought that when you entered more searches, it would delete the ones before at some point. So I look on his iPad one day and see a search for boobs or something like that. The search after that was cheese, then cheese, and then cheese, and so on. So many cheeses. Wouldn't you have to start at the top where it was just a whole bunch of cheeses and then see it be less and less cheeses as you go down? So you'd be scrolling down through all of the cheeses and then get to the bottom and see boobs and be like, I see what he was trying to do. My significant other was looking something up on YouTube at her sister's place, and the search bar autofill defaulted to sexy girls with nipples you can see through their tops, but spelt horribly. My significant other's niece is 6. Needless to say, her parents were mortified and doubled down on the parental controls. When Twitter became popular, my son was about 5 or 6 years old. He came up with a way to tweet vocally. Throughout the day, he would say things like, "Going to play with my trains, tweet tweet," and "bacon for breakfast, tweet tweet." I was sad when he stopped doing it. When I was 11, my mom asked me one day about some Google searches on the family computer, including sexy Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. I blamed it on the babysitter and somehow convinced my brother to back me up. A couple years later, I was caught searching, "Can I see a picture of a girl in a bikini?" But I wasn't able to blame it on anyone this time around. I've since discovered the incognito tab. I think the incognito tab might be the secret hero behind this entire Reddit thread. My stepson is 7. I found a bunch of searches for Dominicans with no hands and feet, Dominicans with no heads, Dominican chests, Dominican torsos, Dominican legs, Dominicans in stores, Dominicans for sale, silver Dominicans, black Dominicans, white Dominicans. I was at a loss of how to bring it up to him. Thankfully, the next day we were in a clothing store and he asked me why Dominicans don't have hands or heads. Then why are there so many different colored Dominicans? I remembered the internet searches and became a little upset. I told him to be quiet because what he was saying could be taken offensively by Dominican people. He then got frustrated and loudly said, "Dominicans aren't people," as he pointed to a statue next to us. I breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Mannequins." I'm sure you still got a few looks in that store though. Not my kid, but my nephew. He was diligent upon receiving his phone to get Facebook installed along with an account. Last year, Halloween, I walked by him on his phone and glanced at a video of an explosion. Turns out, he liked a page of people blowing crap up. Not just any crap, but the actual crap that comes out of people. When confronted, he said he was shown the page from a friend who uploads videos there. You know, typically I would say your kid's gonna be friends with who he's gonna be friends with, but I think this is definitely one of those cases where you need to intervene. My son has autism, high functioning but still autistic. He's been mainstream for most of his schooling, and in 5th grade, one of the boys told the others how to search vagina and boobs on the computer. Well, my son in all of his autism glory was searching pagina, not vagina, and was only getting pictures of leaves. Poor kid. This was probably the early 2000s. Me and my buddy were off school for the summer and he would come hang out at my house. Occasionally, we'd look at adult content on the family computer. One day, my dad comes home from work and comes downstairs and says, "Hey, you guys missed the bus." I'm like, it's summer. There's no school. My dad responds, "The bang bus." Mother of God, we forgot to close the browser. I found a search for weight loss on my then 12-year-old search. Bothered the heck out of me as I've always tried to instill good body image, and she's by no means overweight. She was going through the baby fat stage. Started having conversations about the importance of being healthy and exercising, but to be comfortable with the body we have. She's since stretched out, but man, I looked for signs of starving and bulimia. Her mother was a bulimic, and I didn't want her to repeat that. We got my young daughter a tablet last Christmas. A couple days later, I went to look something up, and the search bar history had one entry. Is Santa Claus real? Well, that one kinda backfired, didn't it? When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.